All right, I am here with Danny from Cooking in the Yard. Today, we're just going to be talking a little bit about what Danny's been up to, a little bit about some of the things that he's learned throughout his sort of time in the barbecue community. So, Danny, I guess the first thing that I want to ask is just like, what is it that, or how was it that you got started kind of on your barbecue journey?
Yeah, it's a great question. I reflect on this from time to time. I think it's when I moved to Texas. I moved to Central Texas back in 2006, and what's widely regarded as the barbecue capital of the world, and I
For sure.
certainly think so. Certainly the beef barbecue capital of the world. And I love to eat, and I learned how to recreate a lot of what I was eating at some of the iconic barbecue joints there. So that was it. That was the beginning part of it. I've always been a huge fan of food, been a huge fan of kind of creating something out of nothing. So that's where it all started, and the craft of it is something that I've always enjoyed as well. And that there's no such thing as perfection in this world. So
Yeah,
there's always a reason to do another.
it's the best and worst thing about barbecue, yeah, that it's never
Absolutely,
done. Yeah,
absolutely,
it's a good place to figure out barbecue. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, absolutely.
So maybe part of this is kind of where you've come from. Maybe part of this is sort of that time spent with Texas barbecue, which is sort of its own very sort of defined kind of style. But, when I look through your Instagram, I see a bunch of different kinds of things that you've cooked. And so I guess the question for me is like, where do you find your inspiration for these cooks, these interesting sort of things that you're making?
Yeah, from all over the place. I think from the community, the barbecue and food community first and foremost, and
Sure.
just staying motivated and inspired by what others are doing and others that are kind of setting and raising the bar ahead of me. I found a somewhat of a passion for building my social media presence. It's been fun. I started it during the lockdown, the COVID quarantine, early 2020,
Yeah.
and I think it was what kept me sane during that time, being locked down. And I quickly realized that I could only cook so many briskets in a week or in a month
Cool.
or so many racks of ribs. So I wanted to continue doing the social media kind of experiment at that time. And so born from that is just exploring new types of recipes and different styles of cooking. I've always been a fan of cooking, been doing it, the majority of my life. So it kind of came naturally to some extent, but going from the low and slow cooking to more of the family cooking was kind of a natural progression there, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, very cool. Awesome. Yeah, look, it's interesting sort of how varied sort of things can come through, like these ideas. It's sometimes you'll see something absolutely crazy in Instagram, or sometimes you're just cooking in your yard and you kind of just want to see how it goes.
Yeah, just to do something different at
Yeah.
times is a lot of fun.
Ah, very cool. Very cool. So barbecue is something that obviously your Instagram is committed to, your social media sort of is all about barbecue, and different sort of ways to do it, different recipes and things. But I guess, something that really interests me is, what's something that you've sort of found is commonly misunderstood about barbecue?
Yeah, that's a great question. I never knew this before I got into doing social media as much as I have, but I think the answer to your question is how delicious it is. I'm
Yeah.
really surprised at the number of people, and this is largely comes from an international community, right? That when you post a picture of a brisket, they'll comment and say that it's overdone, or you want your meat well done, or something like that, and
Yeah.
just not having a full understanding of the craft and of the food and that sort of thing. And I never realized, just kind of in our own little bubble here in the United States, and especially me being here in the Midwest, I never knew that kind of thinking was out there, or people who just thought pulled pork was disgusting,
Yeah.
things like that. So I think there are still, kind of a lot of misconceptions out there about barbecue.
For sure, for sure. My favorite is when you have like a good crust on a brisket and people say, like, did you drop it in dirt or did you burn the outside?
Exactly.
Or the second favorite is when they see a smoke ring and they think that it's undercooked.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly right.
I don't
The
understand
other
those.
thing the other thing too is there's the people out there who, whenever you do get a really good smoke ring, and you're proud of it, and you want to show it off, the very first thing that people say is, "Oh, you use some kind of chemicals or nitrates on there to get that and that." That's always a little bit deflating, but it's always fun to keep coming back and doing it again and again and showing how you do it more than anything else.
For sure. Yeah, no, I 100% understand you. I think that's the curse of social media. Yeah.
100%. That's kind of what we deal with, but that's okay.
Fair enough. No, awesome. So obviously you've been barbecuing for a little while now. COVID was a fantastic kind of catalyst, I think, for a lot of people to get into the backyard and start, learning their skills and trying a few things out. So what sort of some advice you have for those people who are still learning the ropes with barbecue?
Practice makes perfect. And at the end of that practice, there's always barbecue, or usually barbecue. And the advice that I would give specifically to somebody that's starting out is understand that you're gonna ruin your first few cooks. You're gonna ruin cooks along the way. I still ruin a cook from time to time, and it's frustrating, but it all goes, part of the experience. What I learned to do when I was first starting out, and I would dry out a brisket or something wouldn't go right, is I'd make tacos out of it. Kind of the making lemonade out of lemons is you still have a way to repurpose the food. There's still things that you can do and tricks of the trade. So learning those things is a good part of the journey as well, and what to do with when you think you failed, but you can still make something salvageable out of it.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point. How often is something that you barbecue actually inedible? Not very often.
Not very often. Yeah.
Some options for it. One of the things that I learned really early on is I sort of started with making jerky, and sometimes I would make it kind of too dry, and I'd crumble it up and put it through a salad like you would with bacon bits.
There you go.
And that was my way of sort of putting a spin on something that was essentially ruined for its purpose.
Yeah, and then when you give it to somebody and they ask you what it is, you tell them that you're a genius and you planned it that way from the beginning. And
I thought of this cool thing. Yeah,
exactly.
No, that's awesome. I think that's actually a really, really valuable lesson for people, that there are other options, and tacos, or really sort of anything kind of from Mexican cuisine, is a really easy transition for barbecue, I think. So I think that's really interesting.
For sure. And I think the overall expecting perfection every single time, especially starting out, is just setting yourself up for failure. You're just going to be miserable doing it. And,
for sure.
It's hard to accomplish.
For sure. No, I love that. That's fantastic. And so this is probably a question that maybe sort of relates to that, and maybe it's totally separate, but you have a pretty good size sort of social media footprint. So part of the thing about that is that you get a lot of questions. And so I guess my interest is, what is the question that you get that is your favorite question? What's the one that you enjoy the most?
Yeah, you're right. There is a lot of them that come in, and it's certainly grown over time. I'll be honest with you. I don't know that there's one in particular that I get necessarily more than others, but I do get a lot specifically from recipe to recipe. So somebody will ask me, for example, "Hey, I don't have a smoker. Can I cook this in my oven? Or can I do this in an air fryer?" What I love about it, and what really excites me, is that people are not only engaging with my content, but taking an idea that I had, or something that I put time and effort to make and develop and feed my family, and they're doing the same with that based on something that they've seen from me. Which, again, man, starting this thing out 2 years ago is just some guy taking pictures that he was sending his friends of his ribs and putting it on Instagram. I never had any idea it would morph and transform into this, but man, getting that feeling of helping people and giving them different ideas of things to feed their family, it's been great. And I'll field those questions every single day. I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's something really sort of authentic from that organicness of sort of the social media that you've developed. I think that's really amazing.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, very cool. So I guess as part of that sort of growth, and someone who, obviously has taught themselves a lot of things during COVID, which I think is fantastic, what sort of have you found to be really valuable resources that maybe other people who are learning would want to use?
Yeah, so like I said, I've been cooking for a long time. I would cook with my mom, cook dinner, and my sister was a cook. I went to culinary school for a while, so it's kind of been in the family a little bit. But as far as barbecue
cool.
and anything more advanced, I would say, than cooking a steak on the grill was foreign to me. YouTube, online resources, Instagram, people that kind of do what I do. Watching the Aaron Franklin videos, or Malcolm Reed, or I still watch Google Foods, for example, to get some new ideas and inspiration, just for entertainment as well. We live in an age where there's so many resources that are out there that you can pretty much find the answer to anything that you can think of. So the advice I would say is, just stay up and watch YouTube videos and get some ideas and write it down and take notes and kind of build out your step-by-step for your cooks. And if it doesn't work, then tweak it and refine it. But as far as resources, like I said, all self-taught. I never worked in a restaurant, or I'm just a big fan of eating barbecue. Yeah. So I just took a lot of time to understand it, learn, I think, some of the science behind it as well, and put that into practice.
For sure, yeah. No, I think that's awesome. One of the places where, because you mentioned the science, and I think that can be really valuable too, to sort of really understand what's happening. Amazing Ribs is a place where they crush the science on a lot of stuff. And so sort of mixing that in with the inspiration that you can find through social or through YouTube and things like that, I think is a really cool combination. That's
for awesome. Sure. I agree.
Yeah, amazing. Oh, very cool. Okay. And so, like, what is it that is next for you? What can you see Cooking in the Yard doing in the future? What's next?
I get this question quite a bit, to be honest with you. And it's usually followed by, when are you going to go full-time in doing social media or cooking of some sort? And the answer is, I have no idea. And this is the answer to your question too, is I really don't know. It's a lot of fun doing what I do. I cook to feed my family, and create content. And I've got some amazing brand partnerships and working with some absolute terrific companies. And I've met a ton of amazing people in this community online, and both barbecue and the food world overall. And I'm really enjoying it. I enjoy the conversation, the community, working with different brands and promoting their products and getting some new information out there to other folks, kind of the me of where I was, 2+ years ago.
Sure.
Now, that's not to say, if something happens and I turned into Matt Pittman, Meat Church overnight, that I would be upset about it. But for right now, it's a super fun hobby that's starting to turn a little bit into a business. I'm going to just ride it as long as I can and just see what it turns into. Like I said, 2 years ago, I would have never expected to have the opportunity even to be sitting here talking to somebody like you in this forum. So, who knows what 2 years from now will bring. Yeah,
very cool. Well, that's awesome. And again, sort of, it kind of comes back to that authenticity, I think, is, like, there's nothing wrong with pursuing something you want to do, but there's also nothing wrong with kind of leaving your options open and sort of seeing what that's going to look like and just kind of growing and moving towards it. I think that's really exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very cool. So for people who want to see more of what you're doing, where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. So I'm on Instagram, on TikTok, and on YouTube at this point. All my handles are at Cookingintheyard, all one word. It's long, but it makes sense. And that's what I do, at Cookingintheyard.
Cool. That's so nice to have all of your socials the same.
Yeah,
that's so nice.
Luckily, I got really lucky with that one. That there wasn't anybody else out there, and it was a complete rash decision. I set up my Instagram account, and it got to the point where I had to name it, and I had absolutely no idea what it was going to be. And I thought, well, what am I doing? I'm cooking in the yard. So it worked out okay.
Perfect. That's awesome. Awesome. So if you are interested in seeing a little bit more about what Danny's up to, seeing what he's doing in the future, definitely go ahead and check him out on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. He has some amazing recipes. He's got some really cool techniques that he shows, and just a bunch of really fun videos, really sort of demonstrating some of what he's up to, cooking in the yard. So thank you so much for coming along, Danny. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions for Danny, give him a shout out on his social media, and look forward to catching you later. Cheers.
Thank you very much.